Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today to talk about the residential gyms and pools in BTR and how will the landscape change after COVID-19, how it's changed to date. Andy, my colleague, is going to start the presentation today, and I'll pick it up from him a little bit, about halfway through the actual deck that we've got today. Any questions, obviously fire them over as you go, and we look forward to chatting towards the end of the presentation. Andy Kay.
Thanks, Philippa. Thanks, David. It's quite unusual to be presenting in a room on my own, just looking at a TV screen or a computer screen. It's Zoom has been, I don't know whether you've seen it evolve over the few months or the few weeks we've been in lockdown. At the beginning, there were lots of people quite serious and quite formal, and they had bookshelves behind them. And then as the Zoom culture developed, people started to introduce things like their dogs or their cats into the equation, and it became a bit more relaxed. And now I'm reliably told that the new Zoom etiquette is to have a goat along, so you can spice up your virtual meetings by inviting along a goat. And Mary here just costs £5. So we did think about introducing a goat into our presentation today, and you may see one along the way at some point. The fitness industry had a rapid response to its doors being closed on March the 20th. And what we want to do is talk about that in the first instant, but by using our own example at Educated Body. On the screen now, you can see a picture of myself and Philippa, you'll recognize from the video that you're watching, and also Carla to the side there, who's responsible for any goats. We've also got Louise and Neil and Salar, and a team of about 50 members of staff. And as March played out towards the beginning of March, we were very much in a situation as a business where it was denial and business protection. And what I mean by that is we didn't want to close. And as time evolved, we had an ever-changing risk assessment. We had certain facilities that we were taking out of commission, so steam rooms, saunas, water fountains, that type of thing. We were talking more with our clients, we were talking more with our staff, but it was very much the show must go on and business as usual. And then Boris dropped the bombshell on that Friday evening. I'm sure that most people on the call will understand the sort of emotion that went through everybody at that time. And we had a lot of staff immediately, in fact, as Boris was still speaking, WhatsApping us, texting us, messaging us, asking what was going on. And in that evening, we closed all of our gyms. And we went from a position of being open at 5 to 5 to being closed at 10 p.m. that evening, and reassuring staff at that point in time that everything would be okay. But of course, we didn't know it was going to be okay. We worked hard that weekend, and then we began to get our heads around the problem and worked out a strategy for our survival. And that included things like, in the first instance, protecting jobs, something I'm sure you'd all agree has been a massive thrust from the government throughout this whole thing. Protecting cash flow, speaking to clients, understanding what relationship we were going to have with clients during this period of time, this lockdown period of time, and whether we could get any money in from those clients, and remodeling lots of what if scenarios. And once that got on an even keel, there was a growing acceptance for us of this reality of lockdown, of our staff being furloughed in the main, and a Zoom culture that was evolving. And then we started to think about what can we do as an organization to come out of this stronger at the other side, and what behaviors would define us through this lockdown period. So things like the values of fairness, making sure that everybody that we interface with as a business, whether that was a staff member who was worried, or whether it was a client, or whether it was a supplier, we dealt with fairly. And then we started to get creative about product delivery. And it's that creativity that's really defined the fitness industry in terms of its response as a whole. And we're going to talk in this presentation about what that means to BTR. The global situation with regard to leisure facilities is it is almost entirely closed. We've got China opening now, we've got the Nordic countries also opening, but If you're a commercial health club, your revenue has stopped and you're in a position of not being able to deliver a service that is almost always delivered on a face-to-face basis. The bottom two points on the slide that you can see now are bolded for a reason. Digital at the moment is the only way that the fitness industry can provide its services, and it's therefore been thrust to the forefront. And the digital evolution has accelerated rapidly. There are some companies that had a digital provision going into this COVID-19 crisis, and for them it's been a really important and good time for business growth. But others have had to pivot and change the way they do things in a matter of a week. So looking at fitness habits and what people in the main have turned to during lockdown. This is an extract from a search online for online workouts, a Google search, and you can see there that that spike towards the end represents just 6 days and showed a 700% rise in searches for online workouts against what had been a static number of searches leading up to that period. So demand for some form of workout was there. During lockdown, people's habits have changed. And this and some of the slides to follow are from Alliance Leisure, and who are a big partner in leisure and we've been acquainted with for some time. They sampled over 4,000 people in April 2020 to understand what lockdown was doing in terms of change of behaviours. Previously inactive populations, they were defined as people who were exercising less than 30 minutes per week prior to lockdown. If we're following a traffic light system here, which says that the greens show where people have increased their activity, the amber says people have stayed the same in terms of their level of activity, and the red says they have decreased. The inactive amongst us prior to lockdown, you can see by that broad green swathe, have become more active. The active, so those people that prior to lockdown were doing greater than 120 minutes per week, 48% of those people have actually become less active. And what conclusion we can draw from that is the previously active were in the main visiting gyms. Their gyms closed, and that group of people have not adjusted or taken time to adjust. The previously inactive found themselves being thrust into the situation where the government had put exercise at the forefront of the lockdown. It was one of the things that you could do just to escape and get out. People have learned that exercise is fun in the main. They've learned that it's good for them, and they're starting to build habit. So what we can draw as a conclusion from this is that when we reopen, those people who used to exercise a lot and visit the gym, we believe will come back strongly and start to visit the gyms. And those that were inactive represents a new market for people, in so much that they will want to consider and continue the habits that they have formed during this lockdown period. So fitness facilities, your fitness facilities in BTR, alongside all others, will be in high demand. We just look at that slightly closer and break it down into age brackets. Two groups on this graph of ages have shown a decline in physical activity during lockdown. And that's the very top one with the 16 to 24 year olds, and the second from the bottom, the 65 to 75 year olds. But the majority have increased or stayed the same. If you look at the 25 to 34, second one down, and the 35 to 44, which represents the millennial, they've shown the biggest increase in activity during lockdown. And we know at BTR it's not all about the millennial. It's about many different types of people who are starting to see renting as a way of life. But the millennial is still an important demographic within BTR. And this is telling. And what we think that this will show is that fitness will become even more of a priority in amenity space post-lockdown. And it's a service that in BTR we're really going to have to get right. Types of exercise during lockdown were characterized by what you can see in the yellow block there, lots of people walking, the two shades of blue, running, cycling. And the interesting one over to the left, the green, is home workouts. Home workouts were almost all whereby exercise was delivered online onto a tablet, smartphone, or TV. And if we explore that just a little bit further, you can see a breakdown of those online workouts here. The green shows workouts led by a local fitness instructor. And what is meant by the research there is where somebody was a member of a health club, and that health club pivoted really quickly to provide some form of online workout. That may not have been the best quality workout that that person would have ever done, but it was the health club responding and making an effort and doing something for its members. And where those health clubs really won out was, as a member, you recognize the instructor that's actually taking the group exercise session. So there was a real sense of connection and community there, and a real sense of, from the customer, thanks for doing something, thanks for continuing my membership. Even though I'm frozen, I'm not paying anymore, you're keeping me connected, and that's a good thing. So a huge amount of work went in from the fitness industry to do that. You also see people on there like Joe Wicks, who's the pale blue. Joe Wicks already had a digital platform. He's accelerated enormously through this. I think when he was doing his PE sessions for kids at 9 a.m. in the morning, he got close to 1 million people per day at the beginning watching his live broadcasts. And Les Mills may be somebody else you recognize as if you're used to working out. Again, they already had a digital platform, and this period has been, from a business point of view, very advantageous to them. So looking at the digital fitness landscape and what does this now look like, and why is this important to BTR? I think it's worth pausing for a second here. We're talking a lot about digital because that's the rapid response the fitness industry has made to lockdown. But it will be a blended approach coming out of this. And what you see on the left there, lots of people will still want treadmills, bikes, benches, and dumbbells. And this is not going away. And that should be part of your central offering in Build to Rent for the future. But because of changing fitness habits, and more people than ever have been involved with home workouts, things that they've seen online, exposed to different providers, they will want group exercise and a flexible space to do their own thing. And what we're looking at now for Build to Rent, and actually for some time we have been saying this, is that this blended approach is really important. And as we evolve through this process of lockdown and emerge into reopening, it'll be really interesting to see the pressure on amenity spaces. If you take into account on that point as well, a lot of people will be working at home in the future. The Zoom culture has changed the way people work. And if they do work at home, in the BTR context, that means that they're in your buildings much longer for many, many more days. So this is what the digital landscape looks like now. And it's just a confusing mix of lots of different ways of providing fitness through onto a tablet or a smartphone or onto a screen. What we've tried to do is contextualize that and simplify it. So this slide is about delivering instructor-led exercise. So it's not just digital, it's instructor-led exercise. And to the far right, you've got some orange shaded areas, and they represent in-club. So that's a person-to-person experience. Now, obviously, all fitness centers are closed now, so there's no in-club classes being delivered. The green swathe across the middle is live digital broadcast. So that's when the instructor is live, and as Joe Wicks is, so Joe Wicks would be this top one to the left of the green virtual broadcasting, he's delivering a live session to 1 million people who are in their front rooms watching him. And then over to the left, you've got the blue, which is pre-recorded digital content. And that's where it is, as it suggests, it's pre-recorded. It can be really well produced, really well staged, almost Hollywood style, and can be of a really high quality. And the axes that we're looking at here, along the bottom, you've got customer engagement. So how engaged will a customer be as a result of it being engaged in one of these sessions? And then up the left, you've got ease of deployment. So how easy is it for a health club or a BTR fitness center to put this on? You can see the orange, the in-club classes with feedback, or the in-club classes. They score really high on customer engagement because you've got someone there who's a fantastic fitness instructor, who's smiling at you, who's energizing the session, who's motivated, who's dragging you along and giving you feedback as well. So it's no surprise that's massive customer engagement. It's quite hard to do. So ease of deployment is difficult. And that's, I would say, even more difficult to do in a build to rent setting, because you're not specialists at health and fitness, you're specialists at BTR. And even specialists at health and fitnesses find this difficult to achieve for lots and lots of reasons. So what we want to do next is say to you or tell you what we believe an instructor-led digital solution could look like for BTR. And here it is. Same visual, 3 arrows. So what should it look like? You can see a small arrow on the orange in club classes feedback with feedback. So there should be still some human to human group exercise in your gyms, in your studios, in your BTR space. It's really important, and it underpins a good group exercise program. And remember, this is always alongside a full gym provision. People will not want to do this alone. They'll want to do this as a blended approach with treadmills and bikes and all of the other things that you normally see. We would recommend, and this is where the big arrows come in, lots of pre-recorded scheduled content. So when I say pre-recorded scheduled, that means that, hold that thought. That was a handy time for an international sales call. Okay. Pre-recorded schedule. So that means that if you've got a studio with a screen, you can put onto that screen a 9 a.m. HIIT session, a 12 o'clock yoga session, a 7 p.m. box fit session. And you can build a whole class program that has got some physical human beings, the oranges in, but mostly pre-recorded scheduled. And whenever there's nothing scheduled in that studio, it becomes a flexible space where people can go and have on-demand experiences. So at 10:20 in the morning, somebody could go into that studio and do any sort of group exercise that they want. And that's the blend that we suggest should be in a BTR at the moment. Why is this important? Having a digital offering will mirror the wider fitness sector, ensuring that your BTR fitness offering is relevant, current, and attractive to existing customers and new customers. It's really important, the buying decisions of BTR future renters and existing renters who are thinking about staying with you or moving somewhere else. Fitness has risen up the shopping list in terms of where it sits. It's much higher on that shopping list now, and people will judge BTR, in our opinion, on whether their fitness provision is strong and whether that fitness provision reflects what's going on in the wider fitness market. Why should we have pre-recorded? Well, it's superb content from the best instructors in the world. So that could be from Nike, it could be from Les Mills, any one of those providers. From a product development point of view, and talking just about fitness, not about developing your BTR product. If you use or leverage pre-recorded content, then it's no longer the responsibility of BTR to develop new content. That content is locked in. So as trends change, you will automatically change with them. And that's supremely important when you've got discerning renters. Some other good reasons to blend the digital with the physical. It's a lower cost than fitness instructors. It might be a few £100s for a license per month. There's less recruitment of fitness instructors, less administration associated with running that program, less management altogether. You get no lateness or no shows. If it's always on time, and you've got an opportunity for a community enhancing through that flexibility. When people go in there and it's pre-recorded and it's on demand, I could say to my neighbor or meet with a couple of other friends from the building and go and do a session of our choice at 10:22 in the morning, anytime I want. And that helps promote community, which is very important. Just to summarize some of the takeaways from this first part of the presentation before I hand over to Philippa. Because digital has now come to the forefront of the fitness industry, it's really important that it forms part of your future fitness offering. Immediately post lockdown, you should plan for fitness facilities to be more busy than they were. Maybe in the first stages of post lockdown, when people are reticent to move away from social distancing, that might be slow. But quite quickly after, we believe it's going to come back strong. As we said earlier, more people are going to work from home, and this will help flatten the peaks in usage across your fitness facilities. But they are going to be there, and they're going to be in your building much longer and much more than what they were prior to lockdown. And this newfound appetite to exercise at home will put pressure on all of the communal amenities, we believe. And I think because apartments are quite small in this community, it's probably going to be difficult for customers to work out in apartment. And you might even see rises in noise complaints during this time. There are certain spaces that can be repurposed to use for fitness. Outdoor spaces, if it's done correctly, is a good option, as are rooftops. And again, fitness is going to be higher profile. It's been at the absolute centre of communication associated with the government's message. It's never enjoyed such a high profile, and the irony is obviously that the whole sector is closed, so it's a bit crazy. In the future, it's going to continue to be high profile, and again on the medical basis around fighting the virus in the future, or fighting any virus. The general advice is to be fit, and then you've got more of a chance to combat whatever is thrown at you. And as we said earlier, again, it has moved up the shopping list for existing customers. That's those that you want to retain and new customers you want to attract. So there's some takeaways from the first step part of this presentation, which I hope you'll find useful. Just to pause before I introduce Philippa to do the second session. What will the economic rebound look like? We're not economists, we're fitness people. But we stole this information off a good friend of mine who works at a Premiership football club. So we hope it's robust enough, and we've summarised it very briefly onto one slide. Coming back to that denial at the beginning, when I said the educated body was taking the show must go on view about COVID-19. I think everybody thought that there might be a dip for a period of time, and then things would go back to normal, and the economic growth that we were experiencing pre-lockdown would just continue. And as this has gone on, everybody has become wise to the fact that this is not going to go anywhere really quickly. It would have been good for it to have looked like the top, to be a classic V-shaped recovery, but it's likely to look much like the bottom diagram, whereby the economy recovers a bit and then goes back a bit, recovers a bit, goes back a bit, recovers a bit, goes back a bit. And it takes a time before it gets back onto the footing and the trajectory that it was on. And of course, there's no guarantee that that will. It could be a worse shaped economic recovery, whereby it takes many, many years of recession to catch up to where we were before and beyond. And what will define, everyone will play a part in economic recovery as to how they come out of lockdown. And what Philippa is going to talk about now is some practical tips and details around coming out of lockdown and what that will look like for the fitness sector and BTR. I'll hand over to you, Philippa, if that's okay.
Thanks, Andy. Thank you. Thank you. So as Andy said, obviously it's going to be vital now for people to be fit and healthy. It's really, really important, more than any time before. And as one of the slides showed, you've got people that haven't exercised before, or haven't exercised very much before. You know, they're well and truly on track to keep it up. People want to lose weight. You know, Boris has made it very, very clear that his reason for maybe being as ill as he was potentially down to the fact he was overweight. There's very many reasons that people will need to make sure that their immune systems are going to be in much better shape than they might have been previously. So I'm going to go into the sort of the things that you're going to actually physically need to do. So health and safety, number one, all of you will be writing your risk assessments. As a business that operates these spaces, we're well underway with our approach towards what we're delivering into our clients, whether they be BTR or build-to-sell buildings where we manage the facilities. You'll be running this for all areas of your amenities and the rest of your buildings, no doubt. As you'll be aware that if you've got more than 50 people working for you, you're going to need to make this public information anyway. Social distancing, clearly, once we're given the green light to go ahead and open the facilities, we're going to have to work to some very, very strict guidelines. So obviously we don't have a date. So I know that the document that came out has named 4th of July as a possibility. Whether or not that's the right date, none of us know right now. But I'm going to touch on the headings of what we actually need to really look at. So one of them will obviously be social distancing. Hygiene will be massive, huge changes around that, and how you communicate all of your new standards. Social distancing measures, so the gyms. Clearly we're going to try to keep everybody at all times away from each other for 2 meters. So marking out the areas within the space, to mark out the areas for the gym equipment to show the air, and then your walkways will really be important. Not all of your gyms are going to be big enough necessarily to show exactly, you know, to allow an exact space between everything. You are going to have to mark pieces out of order. You may have to move some pieces into storage for a while if you have a particularly small space. The way people will train, looking at the bottom image, I think if there is floor space allowed, I mean, Andy's touched on the use of flexible space. You may actually have space that isn't a group exercise studio in your building currently, that you might be able to double up as some kind of workouts where we can create the spaces along the bottom, whereby people would have a set of equipment and they'd use just that space and keep the distance between you. Gym equipment spacing used to be roughly between 4.5, 5.5, 6 square meters. It may well be that we're looking up to 10 square meters per piece in some of our new plans. Or we're marking the pieces out to create that space, which is obviously what we're doing at the moment. Booking systems are going to be vital. Now, the way we're looking at it as a business and looking on, you know, we've been on many seminars globally with other operators across many countries and how they're doing it. I think the easiest and simplest way of all is going to be offering potentially 45-minute slots and then 15 minutes or 30-minute, depends on the size of your facility, slots for cleaning. Your booking system is also going to be very important. So, Andy, if you want to move to the next slide, the actual system that you use. Now, operating an Excel spreadsheet isn't going to be quite so straightforward. Our business uses something called MindBody Online. There are many systems used in pay-as-you-go studios, which is what these systems were built for mainly, and for class bookings. So what we're able to do is we'll say you can have, let's say it's 10 people per slot. So let's say it's 8 o'clock in the morning and you can have 10 people in your gym until 8:45. So you create your slots so everybody can book in. They'll go online, they'll book that slot. By booking the slot, they have reserved their space. We can hold 10. We might hold another 8 to 10 people on the wait list. The people on that wait list, if one person cancels, they'd have a window to cancel. So in classes, typically your window might be 24 or 12 hours. But for something like this, you'd make a smaller window for cancellations. It might be a 2-hour cancellation window. And that person needs to go on, cancel their booking, and the next person is automatically bumped up and will get access to that slot. They'll receive an email and it will say, you're now in the slot. If you don't want this, please cancel. You can set all sorts of parameters around that booking system. So you can say that people could only visit the gym maybe 3 times a week. If somebody messes you around and doesn't cancel the slot, and each time only 6 people are turning up and the other 4 people haven't cancelled, you can remove their booking rights. You might give them a couple of goes of forgetting to book, and then you can say, I'm sorry, you're going to have to lose your booking rights now for 2 weeks and you won't be able to come into the gym. So please make sure that you do benefit everybody else by cancelling. So I would look at introducing something along this line. You may have a system already within your own management system to allow that kind of booking and cancellation system. Next slide. I've just used the images here from SoulCycle, which I really like. They have great branding. They're very simple. Your actual signage, I mean, we've created our own. We've got our B2C version, we've got our B2B, we've got additional signage that will go up in all of the areas, be it the pool, the changing rooms, the gym, the studios, etc. But making it very clear, make it different. You don't want it to look like every other sign that you've got. You'll have your own branding anyway, but I think they've got some very nice messages, some very simple imagery. Make sure that you've got the right cleaning products, make sure everything is visible, and evidence your cleaning. I mean, I'm sure you do anyway, but really even now more so. So the fact that you've got these 15-minute cleaning slots, people want to see what's happening. And I'm sure many of you have been to pay-as-you-go cycle classes. As soon as you're out of that studio, people are in there with their cloths, with their spray, and that's exactly how everything is now going to have to operate. Communication, your comms are vital, and I think I've probably covered that mainly already, but you want people to be confident, you want them to have a sense of security, know that there's a sense of security, that you are looking after them. These are private facilities, they're likely to be the ones people will go back to more readily than commercial facilities. Put out your information on whichever communications you can, and preferably across many. So you may have a video you want to make, obviously the signage, you'll have your emails that will go out, you'll put it within your own management system and for everybody to see. And what you want to look at really is literally showing everybody that you're committed to the highest levels of safety, which I'm sure you're doing anyway across all of your buildings. Swimming pools, spa pools, saunas, steams, showers, changing rooms. Now in build-to-rent, I know it's probably less common to have them, but I'm sure there's people on the call today that do have saunas, steams and pools. Again, government guidelines as of 20th of March to shut everything. So PUTAG is the Pool Water Treatment Advisory Group. That's where you go to look for your information. And there's not a lot online currently, really. The information is really what was there from originally. So what they're saying at the moment is that they've advised with, they've consulted with Public Health England, and that basically the chlorine kills the virus. So to be in the swimming pool is actually quite safe, so long as the swimming pool is, that you're maintaining your pool up to normal standards. But one of the main things really is going to be the chlorine levels in it, because if your residents don't shower, I think on my next slide, Andy, I've got the fact that we're really going to have to shower. Everybody must shower. So we always encourage people to shower before they use the swimming pools, because it changes the balance of chemicals in the pool. It actually uses more chlorine, so it's trying to kill off the germs. If they don't shower now, the chlorine levels will not be high enough to potentially protect people in the pool. So I would actually go to the point of saying that people can't actually use the pool if they don't shower. So again, you've got to have some form of checking, etc. Cleaning and disinfecting all high touch areas. Again, if you're going to use showers, if you don't have a shower on poolside, if you do have a shower on poolside, again, they're high touch areas, they've got to be cleaned consistently. Again, you'd have the shutting down period, you'd have the booking system. If you've got showers in your changing rooms that you're going to use, maybe if you have 3 showers, you've got to put 1 out of order, because again, if 2 people were in them, dependent on how high the walls are between the showers, you haven't definitely got your 2 meters apart. And if they came out at the same time as the shower, you again haven't got the 2 meters apart. So just a few of the other items within the wet area. You're going to have to reduce your numbers. It's going to be exactly the same as reducing numbers in the gyms and the pool and gyms and the studios. You'll work out, and either ourselves or companies that do what we do can work out for you how many people should be in your space safely as far as social distancing is concerned. And one thing nobody's talking about yet, and there really isn't the information, is anything around air handling and whether or not any of that could make any difference. At the moment, all we can work off is social distancing and making sure that people can keep the distance that they need to apart. So you're looking at reducing the numbers in your pool. If you had lanes, one thing as we've looked at is lanes, as you might actually create less distancing because people are going to pass at closer distances. So whether or not to put lanes in may not be sensible, or maybe put 1 large lane in and 1 smaller lane in for 1 person going up and down and 2 in the other. But that's out for discussion. Booking system again for the pools, as I've said. Saunas and steams will remain shut for the foreseeable future. Clearly they're hot, they're small, they create infection at the best of times, let alone during a pandemic. Small spa pools, again, same thing. You can't create the social distancing, although the chlorine would potentially kill the virus. Showering, I've touched on. Social distancing in the showers, I've touched on. People are not going to be able to be in the changing rooms for any length of time. They need to arrive ready to swim. They should ideally, obviously, shower, use the pool and go. Ideally, we wouldn't even have them showering to leave, just put on a robe, put on a tracksuit and go as quickly as they can. Poolside furniture, that's another important part, soft furnishings. All of that will need to go or be marked as out of order. And water fountains, Andy's touched on already. Water fountains, obviously bottles can touch if someone's refilling their bottle, or if there's saliva, that's going to be a rife area for contamination potentially. WC is obviously 2 meters apart. Legionella, again, everything's been shut. As and when we're going to be ready to open, book your Legionella test. Flushing is going to take much longer. For us at the moment, we're still visiting all of our pools weekly. Everything is being done on a weekly basis. We haven't cut back. Obviously on a daily basis, we flush all outlets. Some of the estates are flushing all outlets anyway for us within our areas. I would assume as operators, you're doing the same. Looking at descaling or shower heads or tap heads, pool hoses before you open is also vital. It's where the Legionella would accumulate. And again, make sure that you do book your Legionella test in ahead of time before opening, because it's going to take you time to get your results back. Saunas and steams, leave the doors open so that they do dry out. Don't keep them shut. Again, it's a hotbed for Legionella growth. First aid, really important point here. So the changes in the first aid. Nobody is going to be giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation now. So currently the Resuscitation Council of UK has states that CPR will consist only of chest compressions and use of a defibrillator. There will be no mouth-to-mouth. As soon as you have to go to give first aid, you're now going to have to wear a full face shield. So again, purchase your face shields ASAP. And clearly that will be reviewed by the governing bodies on a monthly basis. And most importantly of all, we just wanted to have another little funny point really around the goat. As Andy said, it seems to be the thing of the moment in Zoom. It's basically to keep everybody safe. So thank you. And I know there's been some questions coming in. David, are you going to be able to help us? It might be easier if we take the slide off, Andy, and just have us, so for people to ask us the questions.
Sure. Philippa, Andy, thank you very much for the presentation. That's really illuminating, lots of really interesting stuff in there, lots of real information in there. The first question we've got in, I think, picks up on your points about swimming pools, but I think there's probably a broader policy question behind it. I mean, the question that's come in from one of our anonymous attendees is, would it be better to close the changing rooms and showers in residential buildings so people simply swim and leave? And I think the word better is an interesting one in that context.
Yeah, we've looked into doing that, and it depends on your access into the gym, so into the pool. So a lot of pools should really be dry in, wet out. The design is usually dry feet in, wet feet out. So the chances are they've got to walk to the change room. There may be an additional door. If you've got a shower on poolside, whereby somebody can shower, that would potentially be fine. And let's say you can only have 5 people in your pool at any one time. That would be quite easy to control. You would want to ask people to take their flip-flops off immediately they go onto poolside. So what you don't want to do is encourage bacteria onto poolside, which is then taken into the pool, which will then decrease the levels of chlorine, which will then make the pool less safe. So potentially, it's dependent on, I think each scheme will be different. I mean, we've got some schemes that we manage and operate, whereby we might only ever see 2 people in the pool at any one time at the best of times, or other places where we might have 20 people on poolside. So I think every pool, each risk assessment will have to be looked at on an individual basis.
I mean, I guess the other point, I don't know whether anyone's talked to you about this, really is the ability to change design, whether it's the flow in the building or whether it's actually physical things, and those must also be limiting factors. So Andy, Philippa, I'm not sure, have you been talked about, people are talking to you about that sort of thing, what we can do into the changing things?
I think the change of obviously you can have arrows in the floor. So we have a design arm of our business anyway. We do a lot of design work within residential, build to rent, build to sell for leisure facilities and amenities. Clearly, I think, I think there's some change afoot, whether or not, I mean, nobody knows if it's going to go away in a year or be here for 20 years. So I suppose at the moment, making sure that we can make the most of what we've got and create traffic flows as you would in a supermarket or any other store or any other environment is important. A lot of the gyms are small, so I do think to say, you can say keep to the left. I mean, the obvious is keep to the left in this country. You'll see obviously in the States, if you look at anything they've written, it's keep to the right. Try to keep to the left. Be aware as you get off your treadmill, check, is somebody getting off the bike 2 meters away from you? Wait a second. I mean, there has to be a level of responsibility for the residents too. And I think within our signage that we've written and our comms that we're putting out, as and when it's ready to be put out, it's very, very clear that the people using the facilities have to take responsibility themselves as well. We can't stand there and say, don't get off yet. They've got to take a level of responsibility. But I think
also,
sorry,
Philip, I was thinking also on that design point, I think there'll be short-term changes, which are marking floors and changing, signage and behaviours. And then the long-term impact of all of this could be that fitness is just much more popular and therefore we need bigger spaces. Or it could be, as Philippa said, that social distancing becomes much more acceptable and people never in the midterm want to exercise so closely to other people. So I think they're questions that are still yet to be fully understood. But as Philippa said, we've got a design arm. It's what we do, and we are really well placed with our background in gyms to be able to advise on that. That's my sales pitch.
And in fact, given that leads neatly into the next question, which is, if we will require bigger gyms, is there a minimum size you would advise?
Well, we do a lot of that anyway for a lot of people on this call. So if you've got 200 flats in your building or 800 flats that are going to access your facilities, we do have a system to work out exactly what you need in that space. Now, clearly, if we say to you, you need 32 pieces of gym equipment, of which X is cardio, X is floor space, X is strength, free weights, and then group X. And Andy spent a lot of time talking about the importance of group X because of all these people that have started training who aren't necessarily going to be gym goers. They are the ones that might want to do the videos or are just going to trickle back into the gym. All our gym users are going to be back as soon as they're allowed to, effectively. But I think what will happen is, if we've said to you before, you need 1,800 square feet, that's potentially now going to be a bit more. It will be more. Because if we are going to have to allow space, and the one thing you might look at, let's say we want 32 pieces of gym equipment, the fact that potentially people aren't going to necessarily be in such huge clusters at peak hours, because potentially if this carries on for as long as it may do, if you've got at the moment on a Monday night at 7:30 p.m. in your gym, in your built-to-rent gym, it's jammed. It might now be that has trickled throughout the day, and you might see that these peak hours are less peaky. So although we now wanted 32 pieces, 32 pieces might be 26 pieces, which we can fit into 20%, 120% more space rather than 160% more space. So I think really we're going to wait for a little bit more information, and we need to see how the spaces are used. And initially I think people will be super, they'll be super, considerate, people of the kindness that has come out of all of this, the communication, the community that has come out of this, hopefully, people will work with all of us to make it work. And rather than getting difficult when they can't get their slot, they'll understand they will adapt their working day if they can. I mean, clearly there are some people that cannot adapt their working day to suit their workout times. And, again, I think it will be a bit of trial and error and a lot of communication. And then the designs will start to appear from that proper information rather than us saying, double your space now.
Yeah, well, and I think at that point you start to say, well, what are the economics of the new world look like? And I think other factors as well, that since if more people are working from home, I know for my case that the time I choose to go out for a walk isn't necessarily the time I'd have chosen to go out for a walk if I was in an office. So I'm guessing that the booking system, that flexibility, and overall the economics will mean that we can't answer that question of what the ultimate size will be for a while yet.
Not yet. And we size our gyms on data. So, fitness industry has generic data, and it has data that it's pulled from commercial spaces. For us, we measure every hour, every day, every facility. We have staff with the means of counting head count. So if we do a walk round at 1:10 and it's 8 people, and then you do your next walk round at 2 and it's 16 people, that hour will be logged as 16 people. We're looking for the maximum capacity of usage within patterns in order to size the facilities to suit demand within residential buildings. That's how rather than using generic data from the fitness industry, which isn't always applicable in an environment where you live. I mean, like our peak hours are later than your high street health club, because you walk out of your office at 5:30, 6:30, and you go straight to your gym. Our gyms, people have to leave the office, go home, get changed, go to the gym. So there are nuances around residential spaces compared to so I think, again, coming back to what you said, really and truly, until we've got the real data, I mean, people may be happy, you know, using pay-as-you-go studios. The reason pay-as-you-go studios works so well, first, you have quality. You've got, you know, if you look at Soul Cycle or One Rebel or somebody like that, you know, you've got classes every hour of the day, very, very good quality. If you can't make your 6 a.m. class because you've got a 7:30 presentation or whatever it is, you're going to do the 6 p.m. class, your 1 p.m. class, your 4 p.m. class, whatever it might be. So there is already a lean towards booking systems and making your workout work for you. So once people are home, I'm hoping it's not necessarily a massive change, certainly for a certain sector of the population.
Yeah. And perhaps that leads on to a question from Sebastian Moritz, which is, I may have answered already, but is how would you rate the use of WEXA or similar installations to provide instructor-led self-paced gym classes?
So we use WEXA, we use Fitness on Demand, and we use Les Mills. We use all three of them in varying different facilities, and I think they are fantastic. I think what Andy was talking about is scheduling. We talked a lot about scheduling classes. It's been interesting. So sometimes when we schedule classes, if we're in a manned facility and you schedule virtual classes, it works very, very well. In some it doesn't. And again, each scheme is very different. Some people just want to do on demand. And then sometimes the residents get together in groups and manage that scheduling themselves. It's interesting. So they really, you know, they might get together and say, but we don't want spin at 7 o'clock. We want it at 7:15. And everybody that wants to spin on a Monday will then say, can you move that scheduled class to 7:15, or they'll book the studio for it. I think, you know, if you look at the States, virtual fitness in multifamily housing is enormous. I think it will definitely be much, much more popular, as Andy was talking about, because the high street operators, the key difference, I think, with the high street operators now, when you're paying 100 quid for your membership or 30 quid for your membership, what the population is actually saying is they're going to use a combination of the two. So it's going to be automatic that the health club chains will give you their own app with their classes on. They're not going to use a prepaid app. So us as a business, we use prepaid apps. We put those out. We have a little bit of instructor-led, but we're not a boutique fitness studio producing really high content. So we're buying in content. So what the big chains will do is create their own app, their own content, and you will get that within your membership. So it will become more normal to assume when you pay your gym membership, you'll also get use of a virtual or an app-based digital system. So the way that people use exercise, well, it's already changed, but it will become the norm to get, you know, within your membership probably. Because, I mean, and in fact, Equinox have done it. So Equinox have already released their app, very, very badly timed for them, about 4 weeks before this happened, and they haven't got enough content. So SoulCycle, I think, only have 12 classes on their app, or did about 2 weeks ago, because they're recording them in the studio. So they haven't had time to record their studios. Like Les Mills, if you look at the difference in Les Mills and say something like Peloton, Les Mills records classes. So you've got the energy of the people. So that's the difference of something like that you're putting into your exercise studio rather than doing on your mat at home, when you've got some beautifully shot yoga workout or amazing Peloton workout. You've got your one-on-one, and that feels okay. When you're studio based, you want the energy of the class, really is the difference. So I really rate, and we've been saying in Build to Rent for about 5 or 6 years, get your Group X in. Doesn't replace your gym, but there's a large percentage of the population that will want digital and virtual.
Andy, anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, I think that there will be more and more. If you take Fitness on Demand, that's a platform where you can put a multiple of different fitness providers' content on. And I think there will be more people, if you like, broadcasting to wider and licensing their content, because everything so far has been a rush to develop, and everything has been offered free. but now people are going to need to monetize that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that somebody like Equinox, as Philippa mentioned, somebody like SoulCycle could go beyond their own members and go out to license their fitness content. And so I think things like Fitness on Demand are great things to have in BTR, because it's a flexible platform that you can pull lots of different content in. And this space has just started to accelerate and evolve, and it will evolve further. And a bit like the design comment earlier on, I think we need to watch this space.
Okay. We've got one more question on screen, which I'll ask you, and then I'll probably ask you a sort of more personal question from my perspective. This is, again, from another anonymous attendee. Would you recommend removing or discouraging the use of water coolers and asking users to bring their own water?
Yes, that was actually in my slides. You absolutely categorically cannot have communal water. It needs to go. So either switch it off at the mains if it's mains fed, or remove it if it's bottle or whatever. Just, but again, so what we did all of this before lockdown. Mm-hmm. So a lot of what I put in those slides, and I'm assuming that people will be able to access those slides afterwards. A lot of what we put in the slides, we did pre-lockdown. So, you know, the 4 weeks before pre-lockdown, our saunas and steams were shut, all our water coolers were out. Towels is an interesting one. It's like, if you've got towels, I mean, for people to bring towels from their flat, again, it's got to be very much that's a freshly clean towel. Towels need to be washed at the right temperature to kill viruses. You know, you've got various other things to look at, but absolutely, definitely no water fountains.
Well, thank you for reiterating that, Philippa.
To be clear.
No, it's my apologies for not spotting it in your slide, or
that's okay.
Worrying about the questions. From a personal perspective, I mean, I fall into one of the demographics where there has been a slight reduction in the exercise according to your stats. But on the other hand, what I have done is taken up walking much more regularly than I would have done otherwise. How will you convert people like me, or what is the opportunity for people like me to reinforce that that habit, and actually then potentially to monetize it, or bring it in within a more organized fashion, and particularly build the rent environments?
Well, firstly, I would say that the fact that you're doing more walking is excellent. I think that's, you know, don't underestimate the benefits of walking. You know, if you're walking for over an hour at a time, you know, it's huge benefit. If you measured, I don't know if you use any form of tracker, but I mean, we're very much a fan of trackers. And I think tracking what you're doing and looking at improvements is, I mean, obviously it's been around for a long, long time, but it's really helpful, really, really helpful. I think it will be a natural, I think the very fact that the government will have a massive, and Andy, I'm sure you'll have something to add to this, but the government will have a huge amount of information that will go out on the importance of exercise, food, general health and well-being. I mean, more than ever before, because, you know, obviously the stats are coming out that people with underlying health conditions, etc., are the ones that are at risk. So I think hopefully there will be a natural ease of people into the gyms and the spaces. Andy, do you have anything else to add to that?
I would say walking's great, as you did, Philippa, and just keep doing it, David, on a personal level. It's great for you. And not everybody will convert to wanting to use either that gym that we said will always remain, and it will always remain, because people do want to do bench presses, they do want to do dumbbells, they do want to do treadmills. The new thing is, or the newer thing is, the digital explosion and all of this different type of stuff. So you might catch the bug along the way by a friend referring you to something, and you might do it and then become, you know, in the same way as they have, habituated to sort of a different type of exercise. But it's not for everyone. I love playing football. I'll play football any day of the week, any time of the day. That would keep me fit, because I just love doing it. If you love walking, stick to that and you'll be fit, healthy.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'm saying I love walking. I'm conscious that certainly, having had a major operation just before lockdown, that I need to do it. But it is, I think, a question of, for people like me who need motivation, need an external motivator, what is it that we can do about that? And there isn't an easy answer, but I'm conscious that I don't want to lose the habit. I would reiterate, David, Philippa's point about trackers, and we use MyZone widely in lots of my fitness businesses and Philippa's business and everything else, and it's just a great way of making sure that you can see how much effort you're putting into your walk or your run or your exercise routine, and it rewards continuous activity. So if you do a certain number of
my zone effort points in month 1, you definitely need to do it in month 2, or you fall back on the status, and it just helps motivate. So I would use a tracker.
Yeah, and also some of the trackers work on at the effort level. So, you know, if Andy went for a run and he's very, very fit, and if somebody else went for a run who's not very, very, very fit, you might find that unfit person is using way more effort points. It's very, very specific. So the walk, you know, whether it's a walk or you're doing some squats or some push-ups, whatever it might be, the effort rate is rewarded in as much that, you know, it's individual.
Okay, we're coming towards the end of the session. Just one more question, I think. How will COVID-19 affect our landscaping on BTR, especially with the desire to be outside? Especially the desire to be outside is increasing, becoming more popular. Walking, running, outdoor tennis, outdoor seating, etc. I think it leads on a bit from my point, but I guess there's also an awful lot of potentially organised opportunities that we can bring into this sector.
Yeah, I think definitely at this time of year, we're so lucky with the weather. I mean, gosh, we couldn't have been told to stay home in a better time of year, really. I mean, built-to-rent operators are very, very good at putting together, you know, activities for residents. I think they do a great job. You know, it's not like us sometimes in build-to-sell, there's no budget, etc. You know, you do a very good job. You put the money aside to do that. It works well. So I think in the short term, there's definitely going to be more outside activities. We can already run outside activities. If there is any rooftop space, I know we work with some of you on the call today, and we know we've got rooftop space. We know we've got outdoor gyms coming. That will become more popular. And it might just be putting together a walking group, because again, it's community. You do a great job at looking after your people. Yeah. You know, I mean, outdoor activity it's still England, let's face it, it's still going to be wet.
Yeah,
you know.
that's right.
I don't even walk to the office when it's raining. I'm really lazy. It's like, I don't like getting wet.
Okay.
I'm glad I don't live in Holland.
No, absolutely. And finally, I think we've got a question which has been put on the chat, is how do we expect the volume of new people work from home will increase the usage of gym? Is there any percentage increase predicted?
I don't know of any. Do you, Philippa, in terms of the
I don't think we can exactly say. I think all the stats are showing that people will exercise more. People will feel safer in an environment they know is clean, because they know the cleaners, they know you're doing it, they trust you, they can come and complain to you, you'll do something about it. So I think we can safely say that once we're allowed to open, I think the residential gyms will see an influx of people. Good.
Okay, that's all the questions that we've had in. Is there any more that anyone would like to submit? No, last chance. So it's 28 minutes past, so let's finish 2 minutes early. And I'll just wrap up by saying thank you to Andy, thank you, Philippa. They're absolutely fascinating stats. Those of you asked whether the video and the slides will be available. Yes, they will be. There'll be a couple on our website in a couple of days' time. And hopefully they'll be, they should be available to everybody. The next UKA webinar is on Thursday, when we're looking at right to rent legislation. There aren't any this week. We had 5 last week. This is hopefully 2 or 3 this week, but hopefully you'll all enjoy them. And thank you once again. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Andy, Philippa, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.
Lovely, David. Thank you for your help today.
Pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.